Hello, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for joining with us on a Saturday morning like this. It's so good to have such a viewership with us this morning, and it gives us great pleasure to have you all join with us for a very timely and imperative discussion. I think, given the current circumstances and given what's happening in and around the world right now, I think this is the best we can do, and we're coming through to you via Zoom. Unfortunately, because of what's happening, we can't make it a physical event, but the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing has gone through all of this to make sure that you get a comprehensive understanding on what's being discussed today. So, like I said, it's going to be a very imperative and timely discussion because, as all of you know, what we'll be going through today will actually help and come in handy to you over the next few months. And as we all know, 2021 and the next few years will definitely be quite imperative for all of us in terms of COVID-19 and in terms of how we as businesses actually come out of this and or even get used to what's happening and make sure that we maximize and capitalize on the opportunities that we have or create more opportunities given that we might be going through this until the vaccination drive is complete. So that's a bit of context as to what's the background of what's been happening and how Slim is organizing. And this is, in fact, one of the special webinars organized by the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing as part of their webinar series that's been coming down for quite some months. And ever since the lockdown and the curfew began, the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing has, in fact, been switching over to digital, and they've been using digital media as much as possible to get through to you when it comes to marketing and timely topics like this. So that being said, I'd like to get things going as to what's going to happen today. So we're going to have a very casual and casual discussion on the topic your digital marketing game plan for 2021 and beyond. We have three speakers joining with us to give you a few pointers and ins and outs of what needs to be done and what their opinions are on this topic. So we'll be going through a few questions, a very casual discussion over a period of roughly 60 minutes, 1 hour, and following which we'll be having a Q&A session. So once again, it's so good to have so many people join with us. We're thrilled at the enthusiasm and the interest shown by a lot of you over the last few weeks joining in with us and registering with us. So if you do have any questions, please make sure to mention them and post them up on the chat, and we'll entertain them as much as possible. Now, in the interest of time, we may not be able to entertain all of the questions that you might have, but just we'll try to entertain as much as possible given the timing that we have to adhere to. And in the meantime, if we are unable to accommodate your question, I'm sure the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing will get back to you with a comprehensive answer on these questions. Now, today's webinar is also on the lines of the Certificate of Digital Marketing, and we have three speakers joining with us. And let me first introduce myself. I am Thilina Udayaratne, and I'll be moderating this session for today. So let me now get down to introducing the three speakers who will be taking us through a few pointers of how we can best make sure to capitalize on the chances and opportunities given in this year and the next few months. So first up, we have Miss Udara Hettiarachchi, who is the Vice President, Client Partnerships at Facebook ASP at Grow Global. Good morning, Udara. It's so good to have you.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Derana, for that introduction.
No problem. So Udara is currently heading and leading the client partnerships team at Row Digital, which operates as the Facebook authorized sales partner in Sri Lanka. And she has experience in communications, and she's an experienced communications professional with over a decade of multinational advertising agency experience specializing in media. So thank you very much once again, Udara, for joining with us this morning. And we'll hope to have a really good discussion over the course of the next hour. Next up, we have Mr. Janeeth Rodrigo. He is the General Manager, Digital Media at Derana Macroentertainment. Good morning, Janeeth. Such a good time. Thanks for joining in with us this morning.
Morning, Thilina. It's my pleasure.
So Janeeth is heading the digital arm of TV Derana, and he's responsible for maintaining over 20 successful websites, including other Derana.lk, Derana.lk, fmderana.lk, and Pulse.lk, and also Cinema.lk. So he's also the general manager and chief architect behind Idea Help, which is Sri Lanka's only creator space, which was recently appointed as a multi-channel network of YouTube. Thanks for being here with us, Janeeth. And finally, we have with us um, we have with us Naveen Marasinghe. Thank you for joining with us, Naveen.
Hi, Dylan. Hi. Thanks
Hi.
for having
Hi. So Naveen is currently serving as Chief Operating Officer at Antyra Solutions, which is an integrated digital agency which is based in Colombo. And Naveen also has worked with a range of local and international brands across business verticals ranging from e-commerce to travel and hospitality. So these are our speakers for this morning. And I think as far as introductions go, in the interest of time, I think I've done a fairly good job, I hope. So thank you to all our viewers and thank you to you three for joining with us. We'll quickly get down to discussions. And as far as introductions go, I think I don't need to touch on digital marketing or the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, which we, as all of us know, Slim has been in operation since 1970, and it has been the one center stage for giving talented young marketers in Sri Lanka that career pathway to thrive and strive to do well in marketing. And as far as marketing is concerned, it has evolved, and now we are more focused on digital marketing, which in fact is going to be the topic of the hour this morning. All right, so that being said, I'd like to get on with the discussion this morning. So we have like I said, we have a few individual questions to our speakers, and once all of it is done, we'll be having a general question, which all three of our speakers will be giving their opinions on. It'll be a casual discussion, and once that is done, we'll have a small Q&A from our viewers who will have many questions to ask as well. Right. Udara, I'm going to start off with you. So tell us, marketing is something that has been there for so long. I think it's very important that our viewers, our participants understand Facebook from Facebook point of view. How do we utilize the social media? How do we utilize Facebook for marketing and business?
Okay, thanks so much, Thilina, for that question. I think it's a very important one, especially given the context that we are in right now. First of all, I think you need to understand the strength of the platform. Globally, there are about 2.7 billion people who are using the platform, and that gives it massive reach and a lot of strength as well. And I think with obviously the COVID-19 lockdown that took place last year in March, I would say there has been a massive acceleration in terms of usage as well. I think that's important to establish firsthand. And I think when specifically talking about the question that you had, what are the ways and means that you can utilize Facebook for marketing and businesses? I think I would say it's really important for marketers to evolve right now beyond the traditional way of using the platform. I think at the early stages, when the platform started gaining popularity in the market, people were mostly using it to drive engagement for their brands. And there was a lot of focus on attracting likes, shares, and comments, which Facebook refers to as proxy metrics. That means metrics that add no business value. I think it's really important for marketers to go beyond that and actually utilize the platform for what it is today. It's a fully geared marketing suite of its own, which actually can assist you in achieving your business goals, whatever they may be. And I think whatever business vertical that you operate in, it's really important to first align Facebook overall to your business strategy and then build from there. And I think if we have any specific questions related to particular industries, we can take them as we come. But overall, I would say move beyond looking at proxymetrics that add no business value and focus on the platform capabilities of actually adding growth to your business.
Absolutely. Thanks, Udara. Since it's the first round, let's just go ahead with the rest of the program. That being said about Facebook, now Facebook has evolved over the years since it began, and today almost everything is more or less on Facebook. So, how do we gear up Facebook? That was a comprehensive understanding, a very short, brief introduction into how we use Facebook for marketing and businesses. With that, I'd like to step on to Janeeth. Now, Johnny, tell us as to how best we can use YouTube digital marketing for to grow our businesses.
Yes, Thilina. I think, see, the, the easiest answer here is that one, YouTube is a very popular and the most popular video platform out there, right? And there was a time we used to say content is king, but as of recent, we've been saying video content is king because that's where the trend is in terms of content creation. Because one, internet speeds are getting faster, internet the cost of download is going down further and further. So video content um, is inevitably going to take a big part of your marketing budget because video is one of the key forms of communication as digital marketers that you have to understand, right? And YouTube doesn't publish this fact, but then according to most uh, uh, data that we have, there are about 5 million, about upwards of 5 million active users in Sri Lanka when it comes to YouTube. Those are the people who use YouTube while being logged in. But we don't have a tabulation of data about people who are not logged in and still consume YouTube. So upwards of 5 million. So, I mean, with our internet penetration above 10 million right now, so about half of that can be reached through YouTube. So that is a big metric that you need to consider as a digital marketer or any business, be it a big brand or a startup, right? Just to give you an understanding, guys, since we said we will give some facts for people to understand without just having a conversation, right? One of the channels we maintain has close to 30 million watch hours a month, right? That's a big number, 30 million watch hours a month and over 300 million views within 30 days. So that's a metric that cannot be ignored on any sense because that metric has made us understand that YouTube, right? I mean, I'm going to keep on saying YouTube with the YouTube logo in my backdrop, but I think we have to look at video as a multi-platform. I think Udara would agree, right? Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I mean, what may other platforms that come along, right? We have to view video content as a very important integral part. And right now, yes, YouTube is the most popular platform for you to upload, but you have to always remember that you need to be multi-platform in your approach as a digital marketer, right? And number two, apart from YouTube being popular, being one of the reasons that you consider YouTube as a digital marketing platform,
Um,
Janeeth, Janeeth, I think you went on mute.
sorry, okay, where did you lose me?
Just after multi-platform.
Okay, sorry. So apart from that, right? Apart from looking at video content being multi-platform, right? And YouTube being a popular platform for your content, the number two reason why you should do it is search is huge, right? And everyone uses Google in terms of their daily life. No one, I mean, as far as I know no one types the URL anymore on top of the browser. They always type it into Google, which is a horrible habit, but that's what they do, right? So another metric is 60% of almost all Google searches only consider the top three organic results, right? And as you know, Google has ranked most of their YouTube content right on top of their Google search, right? So if you have a good YouTube presence, it's a very easy way of being discovered on search. So as a business and you want to grow, those are two main reasons why you should definitely include YouTube in your marketing strategies.
Thank you, Jani. Thanks very much. We'll move on with the rest of the questions and we'll hop back on to YouTube and how best we can actually use this viewership, the link between Google, Facebook, and basically the internet of things and videos, how best we can utilize the medium of video as much as possible to reach our target audiences. Naveen, I'm coming to you. Tell us from your perspective, from your opinion. I think this is a very valid question to all our viewers joining in, maybe young, talented individuals who are looking forward for a career in marketing. Tell us why digital marketing is so important right now than ever, and why do you think people should learn it?
Yeah, so Thilan, I think it's one of the most obvious questions, but also one of the most important questions, I would say. Like I think all of us joining today, and even the viewers, I think they understand the importance of digital. But I think we should also address that obvious question because, like given the current scenario of us coming out of a pandemic, also where we saw that the digital technologies sort of accelerated very fast. When the normal routines of life was impacted, especially because of COVID travel restrictions, one of the biggest options that the brands and clients businesses had was to reach their customers through digital channels. So although the smartphone penetration increases, everything grows at a rate. I think the current incidents of the pandemic actually showed all of us how important these platforms and technologies are. So I think that is very obvious. And if you're looking at having a career in marketing, I think it makes sense for you to sort of look at opportunities at an industry that is growing at a rate. But also from a brand's point of view, also I think it's very important why it's important, like why the digital channels are being important in the way it has. And the other thing I think I want to highlight for someone maybe who's looking at a career in digital marketing is that don't get into the platform or get into that career just because it's a growing industry and there's opportunities. Get into that because you have a passion for it. So if you take digital marketing, it's a umbrella term in my opinion, where you have multiple disciplines coming under it. You have search engine optimization, you have social media marketing, you have social media ads, you have Google Analytics related analytics level skill sets that you can hone. So it's actually great for anyone to with certain amounts of disciplines, like if you have a very good analytic point of view, working as a business analyst, like a data analyst or a data scientist, might be a really good career path. If you're really creative, coming up with ideas, you can look at social media. You can even look at advertising, where you can put your creative thinking into practice. So I think digital marketing, if you explore a bit more, I mean, it can connect with you in multiple ways in terms of the skill sets that you can develop. So I think for someone who's considering digital marketing, I think it's quite obvious, but also it's in my opinion, you should select the discipline or get into digital marketing because you have a passion for it. So explore what all the channels under it, explore the skill sets and the disciplines you need to acquire. When you do that, you will really connect and see whether it makes sense for you to follow a career in that path as well.
Absolutely. I think what you said was quite timely as well, because now, since I think probably last March, the 2020 March, everything has shifted over to digital. It's something new. It's something new to all of us, to our businesses, to this entire populace. It's something new. We've never experienced something like this. I mean, telling you from my perspective, I more or less didn't know what TikTok was until lockdown came along. So it was things like that. And now I think we've adjusted to a certain extent. Businesses have adjusted to a certain extent. Everything is shifting to a digital scale. And that's why we are also coming through to our viewers via Zoom. So I think it's imperative that we get I think we elevate ourselves to knowing that, okay, this might persist for quite some time, and we need to go about it and we need to adjust ourselves to make sure that we are also aligned with what the world is doing. Because more or less, we'll actually, in fact, come back to this topic at the end of our discussion, and I'll get all three of you to actually give out some pointers as to how to go about it. What I was going to say is that more or less the world, the big companies or the giants in this industry have already adjusted to this. It's almost like it's the new normal. For them, COVID-19 is no more a problem. It's something to live with. So we might have to endure it for quite some time. So I think it's time that we also elevate ourselves, our businesses, and make sure that, okay, we need to do things differently because this is going to persist for quite some time. Thanks, Naveen. Thanks so much. I'm coming back to Udara. It's a very general question for you, Udara. I think in plain terms, how do we achieve success with Facebook? What is the formula for success when it comes to Facebook?
Okay, Thilina, that's a very good question. But I think I'm sorry to disappoint and say there is no one single magic formula, like, or a recipe I can give you and say, this is your formula for success on Facebook. But having said that, though, I think it's really important to understand few things, I think, which will help you work towards building that particular formula for success for your own business or brand. First of all, I think one of the misconceptions in the market overall is that Facebook is a niche platform, right? It reaches only a particular segment of the audience in Sri Lanka. That's actually not true. The platform now stands shoulder to shoulder with other traditional mediums as well in terms of the reach. So I think it's important to understand the scale of the platform when allocating your marketing budgets as well. That's something very basic, but I am just saying it for the benefit of those who are on the panel as well, and also our participants. That's something that we really need to work towards eliminating. Consider the reach of the platform when you are allocating your budgets, because without an adequate level of investment, you cannot achieve the desired result on the platform, because as I mentioned earlier, it has evolved a lot from what it used to be even 2 years ago, I would say. That's, I think, point number one I would like to make. And also another thing, I think, especially most of us running ads here on Facebook, I think uh, most of the time, or I think it's human nature, we want to be in control, right? So as a result of that, when we even do targeting on Facebook, for example, for your particular campaigns, we tend to kind of narrow the audience to fit our perception of what our target audience should be. I think right now the Facebook advertising algorithm is so advanced and it uses machine learning to optimize a lot about the behavior that it knows from its users. So the more you narrow your targeting, the results that you can achieve on the platform limits itself. Actually, you are creating that limitation on your own. I would suggest and I would really encourage most of us on this platform to go for broader targeting when you are running your campaigns, because at the end of the day, we are not more intelligent than a machine, right? That is optimizing so much of millions of data points to get you the results that you want. I think that's something that's extremely important as well. And also, if I were to add one more point, I think this is the most crucial thing, Tilina. Since the platform is so advanced and there is a lot of data out there, I think it's extremely important for you as a business or a brand to do testing and learning and invest in it adequately. I think I'm sure Naveen and Janeeth would agree with me. This is true for most platforms, right? I mean, sometimes we tend to do something because a competitor is doing so, but it may necessarily not work for our brand, right? Facebook has great resources if you want to test and learn. For example, if you want to test out which creative gets you the most results, you can do something called an A/B test. It's basically a randomized kind of experiment which lets you choose a variable and select two variations of that variable to test. For example, let's say you're running a creative with two different call to action buttons, right? You can run two ad sets and find out which actually performs better, right? But you need to invest in it. You need to have the patience to let the system learn and understand what would work best for you. So definitely, I would say that's just one example, but testing and learning is of extreme importance if you are to develop your own formula for success on the platform. Yeah, I think that about sums up what I want to say on that front. But if you have any questions, I would be really happy to take them later on.
Yeah, absolutely, Eldar. I think a lot of machine learning algorithms go into what we see today, and it's a bit of trial and error, just like you mentioned, testing and learning as well. So, if you do have any questions, viewers, I'd like to ask you all to post it up on the chat, and we'll take it up as we move on. So, from Facebook, once again, I'm going to try and shift to YouTube, Janeeth, and I want to know, and I think it's very important that our viewers also understand. Um, why I think you touched base on this earlier as well, the point of video and how best to use it and why we should use it. But why should we use YouTube, or why should we use YouTube marketing? And why should it be part of our digital marketing strategy?
Yes, I mean, just to add to something, I think Udara touched on something really important that a lot of digital marketers miss here. That is A/B testing. I mean, Udara, that's really important. I think it doesn't just apply to Facebook. It applies to any campaign that you do digitally, because digital advertising is iteration, right? It's not like traditional advertising where you put a ad on a newspaper and you forget about it and hope someone sees it. Here you have actual metrics, and A/B testing is one of the key methods. So I think it applies to YouTube as well. I mean, in most cases, if you're running a YouTube advertisement, I sometimes see ads where they take the TVC and just put it as a YouTube ad. And as you know, TrueView ads on YouTube can be skipped. And by the time someone skips, no one has even seen. It's just a sunrise, and we've not even seen the brand for brand recall, right? So that's how bad it is in terms of some of the advertising I see within Sri Lanka, because they just take the traditional TVCs and take it and put it on YouTube. So A/B testing is crucial even when it comes to YouTube. To answer your question, Thilina, why YouTube should be a part of your digital strategy is, one, content creation, especially video, has become cheaper and very inexpensive and very much feasible for anyone to do. As you know, we have so many YouTubers who have started with creating content on their mobile phones, editing on their mobile phones, and become big. So for a brand, it's a no-brainer, and it doesn't hit your bottom line too hard to do video content, right? So just recently, I don't know if I'm sure generally when it comes to YouTube, despite digital marketers being there, I'm sure questions will be there for people who want to become YouTubers as well. So just recently, I saw the Insta. I don't know if you guys saw the rest of the panelists. I mean, I saw this Insta 360 Go 2 camera. Just check it out. It's, I think, gonna revolutionize a lot of things and how we do it. I've already ordered about 5 for Idea Health, but it's just so simple, right? Video content creation has become so simple that it makes sense just to edit. Even if you are not a full-on believer of video content, just try it out and see, right? And number two, when it comes to YouTube, it's not just publicity, right? And as most of you know, you can earn money from YouTube, right? So YPP, the YouTube Partner Program, has finally been rolled out to Sri Lanka, right? Which is great. And under YPP now, anyone who passes 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in the last 12 months can apply for monetization and get paid, right? So I see a lot of brands, thankfully, in Sri Lanka who are leveraging this. So apart from getting publicity, they are actually earning from the views of that publicity. And I don't know why that is not the best proposition in the world. And it just makes sense, right? So do content, get your publicity, and earn money in the process. And number three, uh, this is something I want all digital marketers to remember. YouTube is not a social media platform, right? It's a video platform. This is something a lot of people get mixed up, right? And they try to apply what their Facebook strategy is for YouTube, which will not work. I think Udara would agree there as well, right? So YouTube is an easy way of getting a worldwide audience without spending too much money. Why? Because the way you are discovered is because of your content and not necessarily your ad campaigns, right? So if your brand is something that has a TG outside of Sri Lanka, YouTube makes sense if you do not have big budgets, but you are creative enough to do content. Right? So you can piggyback on the success of your content and then do your campaigns on Facebook or YouTube. So it's a great way to start if your company or startup doesn't have a lot of money to spend on advertising. So those three are the reasons, Thilina, that anyone should, have YouTube as a part of their digital strategy.
Thanks, Janeeth. Absolutely. I think it's a budgetary investment as well. I think most of us can try and figure things out on YouTube. But just like you mentioned, it's a process, and we can actually the difference between Facebook and YouTube needs to be understood before we actually invest in something like YouTube as well. And to all our viewers, I think that's something that you should note down as much as possible. Naveen, I'm going to come back to you now. So as much as this entire discussion is on digital marketing game plans for the year, we understand that social media plays a huge role, humongous role in today's world, and it's very apt. So what are what should be our social media game plan for next year?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, Thilna. And so when you talk about just give me a second. I think my laptop needs to be. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of the social media game plan, I think you need to look at it from multiple angles. So if you take digital at this day and age, we've been talking about this in the industry for years and years, and those who are involved in digital marketing are already familiar with this term of omni-channel marketing. So what that means is that your consumer is not just sticking to one device, or their attention is at multiple locations. So you might be, on your phone browsing something, doing a research. You might be on YouTube watching a video. You might be on Facebook, going through your friend list. So one of the most important things is that even in your social media plan, you shouldn't look at it in an isolated sense. So make sure that you look at all your entire ecosystem properly. Understand how you are visible as a brand on Google search. Understand how visible are you as a channel on YouTube. Maybe your content are they consuming. Facebook, how much of a reach or an engagement you have. And once you have that understanding, you can sort of develop a cohesive communication strategy, which is something that will transcend across all the channels. But in terms of social media game plan, I think it's very, very important. And I think we come back to mostly the basics. Social media, in my opinion, is about being able to empathize with your consumer. So having the understanding of maybe engaging with them at their mindset as a brand. So for example, on Facebook, we see sometimes brand, that's why you would do a celebratory post when you win a match or have a certain special day going up. So you have to empathize with the consumer, your target consumer, see how best you can connect with it, and also become part of that discussion. So we see the Facebook groups, we see even on YouTube now you have the ways to comment on videos. I mean, that is very engaging. So be part of that discussion, because you will be able to find similar mindsets across your community. So empathize, be part of the discussion, and also look out for the upcoming trends and disruptive technologies that are coming on social media. So for example, I think I've just recently learned about Clubhouse, which is like a very dedicated platform for Apple. And we see Twitter gaining a very good prominence. So I think, and even Facebook, from where it started to now, as Udara mentioned, it has evolved so much, and YouTube, the same thing. Like, these platforms keep on evolving. They introduce new features, new facilities, new ways to engage with the customers. So be at the, I say this as you be at the forefront of the technology change. So I think that is very important for your social media game plan. A platform maybe that was not very popular early this year could be something that is picking up in certain markets. And also look at it from the I would say the your target geo audience perspective. So for example, the digital literacy in Sri Lanka is improving, it's increasing, but there's also sometimes audiences that are split based on the social media device that they use or the platform they use. Whereas if you're targeting abroad or internationally, depending on the market you are targeting, your brand, where you're trying to push, you might find that sometimes digital literacy is maybe higher, they use different types of platforms, and the costs that are involved in advertising might be different. So have a very good understanding about your target audience and try to understand the markets. In terms of game plan, I think it's just be as authentic as possible and create genuine content. And having a very holistic view of your ecosystem and channeling all your content, your brand story across these channels in a consistent manner. So I think that is at a very high level, I think the way you should look at it. And we can possibly get into some tactics also if you want to discuss how individually we can look at maybe a campaign as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of us, I think, as marketers or just all of us need to be on the go because everything is evolving as fast. I mean, everything is quite fast. It's very fast paced. And there were days when Skype was a huge thing, but now I don't think most of us use Skype, or even at least the number of people who engage with Skype is much lesser actually than who would use Microsoft Teams or even Zoom. So things like that, I think you need to be on the ball and figure out as to how best you could use social media, things like Facebook as well. Speaking of Facebook, obviously, I'm coming back to you, Udara. Um, Tell us and tell our viewers as to, I think this was also part of your earlier questions as well, but quite specifically, how do we best utilize Facebook as a digital marketing tool?
Okay, that's a bit of a loaded question, I would say, Thilina, because it's a very vast subject, right? And I think if I were to drill down on few specifics related to the question, I think something that does not happen, especially in today's marketing world, I'm sure Naveen and Janeeth would agree with me that it's really important to align Facebook with your overall business strategy. It's not just a by the way channel that kind of uh, you use in silos. I think Facebook, I think, as I mentioned earlier in my previous answers as well, the platform, I think, in the early days has kind of established itself as more of a platform that is used to kind of drive fans and engagement and things like that. Right? So align your Facebook game plan with your overall business strategy. But by that, I mean, whatever your overall business objectives are, Facebook has a solution to everything. If you want to drive brand awareness, Facebook is geared for that as well. If I were to specifically drill down on brand awareness per se, I think there is something called brand lift study, which is conductable on Facebook. It basically allows you to measure the incremental impact of your branding campaigns that you're running. Or let's say you want to drive traffic to your offline store or your restaurant. Facebook has a solution for that as well. Or if you want to drive app downloads, or whether you want to go for new customer acquisition in the form of lead generation, Facebook can help you do that. Or even to the extent of making Facebook and Instagram your actual digital storefront. I think most of you are familiar in, I think I would say May or June 2020, Facebook shop and Instagram shop was launched, and now it's rolled out in Sri Lanka as well. And we find a lot of small businesses and even larger scale advertisers using that platform successfully to drive conversions of their products as well. I think overall, it's really important to align FB to your overall business strategy, as I mentioned. And also, I would say think of the users who are on the platform as well when you are trying to adapt Facebook as a digital marketing tool. As you know, I would say 90% of the traffic comes from the mobile device. When you are developing content and creatives for the Facebook family of apps, you need to think from a mobile first perspective. That's extremely important. I think Janeeth touched on this earlier. It was a very valid point that you mentioned, that people just tend to take a traditional format creative and expect it to work the same way online. It does not work that way. Because I would like to share some insights. Actually, most people who are browsing through social media online on their mobile, they use, even video is consumed most often in a sound off environment, right? So how does your creative make sense to someone who is consuming it in a sound off environment? That's why it's extremely important to evaluate the creative assets that you see and have for yourself when you are putting it out there on Facebook. That's just one aspect of it. And also, just a small insight from a Facebook point of view. A person spends less than 1.7 seconds engaging with one piece of content on your feed, right? And roughly a person scrolls through about 300 feet of content on their feeds every day. I think if I were to localize it, that's a little longer than the BOC tower. So just think of the competitive space that you're in when you're trying to stand out and use Facebook for your digital marketing overall. And another point I want to make is it's really important. I think Janith and Naveen would definitely agree with me. I think it's really important to invest in creating content specific to Facebook and Instagram and YouTube for that matter. That's something that most marketers tend to think it's not important. Repurposing creatives works, but actually that's not the case. And I would really encourage everyone to consider the mobile first behavior of consumers if you are to successfully use Facebook as a part of your digital marketing game plan as well.
Thanks, Udara. I think absolutely, because I think gone are those days when we would just open our laptop to see how many messages or requests we've received. I think it's more or less it's all always on the phone, on the go, on the phone. And to all our viewers, I think that was some good advice. All you have is 1.7 seconds to get that attention quickly of viewers and whoever who's checking these content, and to always adjust as much as possible to make sure to appeal to an audience that you might expect or might not expect to actually come on board. So I think you need to be able to reach that audience in whatever position that they may, because at the end of the day, you are not aiming for one target audience. There might be a compact target audience, but in order to spread among such an audience, you need to gauge as much as possible to expand your boundaries as well. Thanks, Udara. Janeeth, I'm coming back to you.
One more thing I want to add, which I think is an important statistic for those who are on the panel. I think over a lot of research that has been done, we found out that only 30 to 50% of your ROI is driven from your targeting, and over 80% actually stems from your creative. That's across global markets, a study that was done covering a variety of ad formats on Facebook. That's something extremely important I thought I should mention.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind to all our viewers as well. Thanks, Udara. Janeeth, I'm coming back to you now. You mentioned as to how best we can use YouTube and how and why video content and video creations and video marketing is so important and so easy when it comes to YouTube as well. So, if you were, from your perspective, with your experience, if you were to give, let's say, a couple of tips to digital marketers, whether they're trying to set up something new, a startup, or something that they would like to do even tomorrow. What are the few tips, a concise set of tips that you would give a bunch of those digital marketers?
Yes, Thilina. I mean, this is generally a 2 hour long workshop I usually have when it comes to YouTube optimization. So I will be as succinct as possible, but I'll try to give stuff for people who are listening so that they actually have something to work on, right? One, despite what I say, go check out the YouTube Creators Playbook. it's available freely. Download it because that has a lot of good optimization tips and hacks. Two, for those who consume content in Sinhalese and Tamil, I have translated these, so reach out to me. I will send them to you if you'd like. And number two, I mean, I think Udara will also agree on this, right? Despite what we do, these platforms are evolving, right? And the best thing you can do as a digital marketer is do the Facebook blueprint, go to the Google Garage and do their certifications, right? Because that's the most up to date, right? I think for us as people who are in the digital industry, one thing we should always remember is we don't know everything, because the platform is not what it was yesterday today, right? And I am myself, I constantly do these exercises, do my research, do the exams as well, so that I am on top of my game. And I think as a person starting out in digital marketing, it's always good to keep yourself humble, right? And keep learning, right? And just to give a very quick idea of what you need to consider before starting a YouTube channel, even if you have one, these are the things that I always advise YouTubers. And most of the time I've given these tips as a way of helping me, because it's difficult to, coach so many people because it's varied, right? YouTube is multiple verticals, multiple genres, but this is something I tell everyone, despite being a brand or a personal YouTuber. This is something I tell as a small exercise to help them start their YouTube channel. So, Thilina, what I say is, before you do anything, right, your channel name is going to be very important, right? That's how you're going to be identified. And one of the biggest problems brands and people have is, am I going to go with something generic, right? Like travel with something or cook with something? Because your channel name on YouTube is something that you immediately target your audience with, right? You, by your channel name, if it has the word travel, if it has the word cook or chef, it's very obvious to someone who has discovered you to know what kind of content there is, right? However, it limits you to one vertical. Yeah. Whereas if I go with my name, Janeeth Rodrigo, as a channel name, immediately people might not know what the hell this is, right? Because they don't know who I am. But that gives me a lot of freedom, because that's a personality. And as you know, on YouTube, personalities generally get more popular than brands. So this is a big debate for brands when they're starting their channels. What kind of channel name, one, are they going to give? Two, what kind of personality are they going to give to the channel? So my little exercise is this: visualize your channel trailer, which it should be a 60-second or 1.5-minute long video, right? In which you must clearly and concisely communicate four things. Right? Number one, who you are. And who you are doesn't mean your name or what the name of your company is. It has to be an introduction about what you are to someone completely unknown to you, to have a clear idea of who you are. Right? Number two, what kind of content will you be uploading? Here you need to really set yourself into one vertical and understand, okay, what is feasible and what is not. Number three, the most important thing on YouTube is the frequency of your uploads. Right? Our advice is minimum one video a week. If you can do 2 or 3, that's great. Right? So 1, 2, 3. Last one is whom should subscribe. If you do this small exercise, right, before you start your channel, it really helps you zone in on what you can do and how you can be more successful on YouTube. Because I get people coming to me saying, I can dance, I love to travel, I can sing also, can I put all of this and make a YouTube channel? Generally, it won't work, right? Because someone who likes to watch someone cook will not necessarily be the same person who would like to watch a travel video, right? So it's really important that to understand that on YouTube, a subscriber is the most important metric, right? I really don't look at views as much, right? Subscribers are the first metric I look into. Number two is watch time, and then engagement, right? So to keep all of these at a healthy level, it's very important to define what you are and understand your vertical, and make sure you have people who are consuming your content and know what they have subscribed into, right? And just to give everyone listening a small checklist, right? After you decide what kind of content you're going to do for YouTube, this is the order in which you need to set up your YouTube channel. Okay? Like I told you, the channel name, it needs to be advertiser friendly. Just because people at home call you Bunny, you can't say dance with Bunny. Advertisers will not be very happy to advertise on a channel like that, because always you remember your revenue comes twofold, right? One is your YouTube monetization, two is your direct sponsorships. And if your channel name and your content is not advertiser friendly. If it's not something a big conglomerate would want to advertise against, you're losing out on a big chunk of revenue, right? So number one, channel name. Number two, you must add your channel icon, 800 by 800. These numbers will be there online. You can check it, right? Then your channel art, right? That's like the cover photo on Facebook for those who don't know. Then your channel description, which needs to be very clear. Number four, channel trailer. That's the, as soon as you go to YouTube, the video that plays, again, like I told you, it has to be a short video of 60 to, a 1.5 minute long video. Then your channel custom URL, as you know, youtube.com, and you can reserve whatever name you like. Do that fast, in case someone takes that before you, right? Number three, YouTube allows you to link to your other social media channels like Facebook and other channels. So you must do that, right? Number three, once you set all of that up and you start uploading your content, most important thing is your thumbnailing, right? Like Udara said, in Sri Lanka, 80% of YouTube is viewed on mobile, right? Even most of our teledramas are viewed on mobile. And more than the video title, the thumbnail is what appears big and prominent on a mobile device. So your thumbnailing game has to be on point, right? And generally the text on your thumbnail is read before the title of your video, right? So your thumbnail has to be spot on. Number two, the video title, the video description, and your meta tags. Meta tags are really important on YouTube. Again, go through the YouTube playbook to understand what kind of meta tags to use, because they do not allow you to spam that by just using the trending meta tags. That can get you demonetized, right? And lastly, and most importantly, I see a lot of YouTubers not doing this, which is your end cards. That's what you get at the end of every YouTube video, where you suggest someone what kind of content you are expecting them to watch next. So always utilize that, because that's how you can increase your retention levels. So Thilina, as far as I can, I try to summarize this. So that's my little optimization hack for YouTube.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Janeeth. I think it goes to show how important little things like YouTube names, the thumbnails, the pictures, and all of that matters when it comes to starting up. Thank you very much. I think goes out to all our viewers and all our listeners as well. Make sure you note that down. I'm going to quickly, in the interest of time, I'm actually going to move forward. Thanks, Janeeth. Naveen, tell us a bit about the trends. I'm going to club some of this and ask you. Tell us a bit about the trends in digital marketing and how best we can use e-commerce when it comes to these topics.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good question, Thilina. I think in terms of I would say trends, there are a few things that we need to sort of look out in terms of in terms of the Sri Lankan market, I would say. So one of the main points we are noticing is that it's already happening that the generation is basically going into a digital age. I noticed some recent statistics that 70% of those who are going through their O levels are digitally literate in terms of, I think, computer literacy wise. So these are some statistics, and I think most of our audience are also is from that age where you are conversant in these technologies and in these platforms. So what it means for a marketer is that eventually, a few years along the way, you will have a very digitally savvy customer audience. So in terms of trends, that is something you need to keep abreast of. And what it means is that you want to look at certain strategies like, for example, micro moments. So micro moments is pretty much something Google has coined several years ago. What it means is that, you are, let's say your decision-making process is comprised of multiple small interactions that you do online. So for example, you might be planning to, as a consumer, you are planning your holiday, maybe in a few months, and you might be waiting at your doctor's queue, and you're browsing your mobile phone and looking at places to go. You're doing your research online. You are not made that decision yet. You're doing your research using maybe Google search. You might be on YouTube looking at videos of places you can check out. You might go to booking.com, and then you might look at places, you look at the pricing. So what it means is that from a consumer journey point of view, you are noticing that digital technology is enabling all these different micro moments that leads to a bigger conversion. So that might be me ultimately booking my trip on a certain hotel. So how can you be part of this conversation? I think is something you need to really look at as a brand or as a marketer, where, can you have, for example, a blog post on your website which talks about your location, where you say, best things to do while you're in Gold Fort, for example. So this is coming from some of the stuff we are working on with even our brands that we work with, where you try to create awareness or interactions with the brand right at the early stage of the consumer journey. So this could be a blog article, a YouTube video where you do a review of your location, things to do at your location, that creates that connectivity with the consumer. So in terms of the trends, I think that's a very important, paying attention to micro moments. And also look at your trends from global and local perspective. As I said earlier, also, if you look at your marketing in Australia, for example, the digital literacy is about 90%, which means that you can really capture most of the age groups that you are trying to address to. And if you take here in Sri Lanka, I think Udara and Janeeth gave some good feedback regarding how the platforms have evolved. So you need to look at it from that angle as well. And one of the most important things I think was I want to mention is in terms of technology, machine learning and AI has really transformed the digital marketing industry. So you see that coming into play in all the skills across digital marketing. So our search algorithm, if you're looking at search engine optimization, those are getting better and better in providing the better results. You see the advertising algorithms, I'm sure Udara she mentioned all of this, where that is getting better and better, where you can really connect with the consumer with ads. And I want all of you guys to also recommend, maybe watch the Social Dilemma, the documentary on Netflix, which is also very controversial. It talks about how social media is taking over our lives and how ethical can we be as an industry also, which is great. I think which is a really good conversation to open up as well. So those are happening. I think the main thing is that in terms of trends, keep abreast of those changes and also look at it from your audience point of view. So so I think those are things you need to possibly keep in mind. I'm just rushing this up a bit on because we are also looking at the time in a few minutes. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Naveen. Yes, in the interest of time, I'd like to move on. Thank you so much. Just before we move on to the general question to all three of our speakers, I'd like to ask one important question from Udara, and this actually came up as part of our listeners' questions as well. Just tell us and give us some insights into the Facebook Blueprint certification and how do we go about obtaining this?
Okay. Thanks, Thilina. I think there's been a lot of interest in the Blueprint certification over time. I think it's very important, especially in the current context, if you want to obtain it. So basically, the exams cover a variety of areas, including your creative proficiency as well as media planning and buying. And also, if you are to test your skills as a developer, there are 3 specific blueprints to do that as well. But I would actually first touch on a little bit in terms of what each qualification means. So firstly, there is the Digital Marketing Associate Blueprint. It's basically like a foundational level blueprint, which basically tests your skills of managing and reporting ads on Instagram and Facebook. And also, then I would come to, I would say the 3 most relevant blueprints for a beginner, or I would say anyone who wants to get serious about digital marketing as a career. So those are specifically the blueprint for creative strategy professional, media planning professional, and media buying professional. So these 3 blueprints I would say are of the most important. uh, especially creative. I think it's extremely important to start off with creative. I think with all the things I've been saying so far on the panel, starting off with creative strategy is extremely important, and then you can move on to media planning and buying. If anyone is interested in becoming certified as a developer, there is also three specific blueprints that address that area. So you can either become a Facebook certified marketing developer, advanced marketing developer, or an API developer. These particular blueprints actually require to do practicals while you're taking the exam. So the need for preparation is quite there. I mean, quite important there as well. But also, I would say definitely read up, even if you are an experienced digital marketer overall. I think you should read up specifically on each particular blueprint. I can actually share a link across which you can get it to the participants if possible. The obtaining of the blueprint is very simple. You sit for an online exam. I think if I'll just take a minute, Thilina, to explain how it's done, if that's okay. So basically, the blueprint certification is managed by Pearson, which is a testing service. I think everyone knows. So how you register for the test is you first go to the blueprint link, and you will find a link specifically outlining the available time slots and days where proctor can sit with you for the exam. And once you register, you are charged for the exam. You can actually charge it through a card, or if you have a coupon, you can redeem it. It's $75 per exam, just FYI. And once you book in your test, you cannot make changes to it. If you don't show up for the exam, you will not be able to refund it as well. And once you actually get into the testing zone, you'll be you have about 2 hours for the exam and 60 questions to complete, all of which are multiple choice. Some also, especially the planning and buying exams, includes a bit of mathematics as well. And you are given a calculator on screen to do those particular calculations, right? In no way your video must be on at all times. You cannot talk to anyone, and there will be a proctor watching you from the other side. Even if you're just speaking and reading the questions out loud, they won't allow that. When I took the exams, that's something I experienced. And at the end of the exam, when you're done, you can recheck your answers and you can submit. Once you submit itself, you are notified whether you passed or failed. And you later on, within 24 hours, receive a certificate explaining your result. And if you want to retake the exam, you can do so right at that link. If anyone wants more details about Blueprint, I would be happy to take on any questions. That's basically what it is in a nutshell. But just to highlight the most important blueprints, the creative strategy professional, media planning professional, and the media buying professional. Those are the three most important blueprints I would suggest that everyone consider taking.
Thanks, Udara. I think for anyone who's interested in the Facebook Blueprint certification, Udara can certainly help you out. If you do have any other questions, please do post it on the chat and we'll try as much as possible to entertain them, given that we only have around 15 more minutes to quickly touch up on one more topic and also have a few questions answered. So quickly, I'd like to move on to the general question, and this is something that we've been actually, I think most of our listeners and viewers will in fact have this question, even if it's someone who's just coming into the field of digital marketing. We spoke about this earlier, COVID-19. How do we go about it? What is COVID-19 and the acceleration that we've seen in digital media overall? It's a general question to all three of our speakers. So, shall we start with you, Janeeth? How about you start off and we'll go on to Naveen and then Udara?
Yes, I mean, it's a very, very broad question. And I think we've all been talking about it because this is the new normal, right? And for me, apart from the pandemic being horrible in terms of the human cost, right? In terms of digital, I think it has pushed us to a good place. One, because uh, most businesses where they would have been 5 years in the future were pushed to innovate and be where they are, right? In terms of Sri Lanka, I can't divulge the exact stats, but the usage of credit cards and debit cards for online payments has skyrocketed, right? And what does that mean in terms of digital marketing? I mean, everyone listening in is actually listening to the correct panel right now, because digital media is going to be a part and a factor of almost any job in the future. I don't think any profession or field is exempt from it. Right? There'll be the Internet of Things, and there'll be disruptions in almost every field where we'll all be connected, right, on some level. So for me personally, the pandemic, apart from it teaching us that strict working hours are not needed for effectivity and to run a business, which is a great thing for me. I think it has taught us the importance of continuous learning. I think that's one thing I've noticed in all my teams, is that uh, because of this acceleration of digital, I mean, the most recent stats we have is around 10 million internet penetration, but that's in January 2020. And I think over the course of last year, this must have shot up by a good 1 to 2 million, right? I'm assuming. So I think as digital marketers, since that's the audience we are addressing here, uh, what the pandemic has taught us is we have to innovate whatever field we are in. I think we have a YouTube channel, just to give examples. I think otherwise we'll be talking like just high level things and it'll be boring, right? We have without naming this, we have a hardware store who started a YouTube channel. Okay, they've been B2B for the longest time, right? And when they wanted to go B2C, they chose YouTube. Right? And how they leveraged YouTube, especially during this time, is because of the lockdown, people did not want uh, too many human interaction. The people didn't want people coming into their home to do the repairs, right? So what this hardware store did was they innovated how home repairs happen, right? They put these things into boxes, because all this time they've been going B2B, right? So they did basic boxes for, just say you wanted to do a small patio on your rooftop, right? They have a box for that, and they have a YouTube video on how to do this, right? That just shows how this B2B hardware, reinvented themselves during the pandemic. And for me, that was brilliant, how they executed that plan, right? So that's just an example of how we've been pushed. And as digital marketers, I think Naveen touched on this, the most important, like the factor of this, right? Udara can talk about Facebook, I can talk about YouTube. At the end of the day, this is still human communication, right? The mode has changed, but at the end, it's all human sentiment, right? We have to be emotive in our messaging, and at the end, we have to solve a human problem in this space, and that's how you will be memorable, right? So in all of this, for me, I think the key takeaways, keep innovating, keep disrupting, and I think this is the perfect stage for you to become a digital marketer. And I think you've chosen the right organization. Slim has been doing great. So kudos to Slim. So I think that's my takeaway from this whole post-COVID situation.
Thanks, Janeeth. Naveen, any opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to agree with Janeeth on his thoughts. I think what this pandemic situation has taught us is that the lifestyle change that it has brought us basically has been facilitated through the digital channels we are interacting with. So now even today, we are having the Zoom webinar without maybe a physical presence. Sometimes, in my opinion, in certain times, we have most of our client work as Zoom meetings, which sometimes has impacted in better efficiency for us. It has reduced travel times. It has allowed more freedom to our colleagues. So in a way, I think us adopting these technologies much faster because of the pandemic. I think that's the good thing about it. And the other thing also, I think very important for a brand's perspective is, if you're a even starting marketer or a brand that is out there, is that these kind of pandemic situations can really impact your business. So we've seen last year a lot of businesses having their sales going down, impact in their revenue. And if you were not really prepared digitally with your digital transformation, your internal processes, that can have very devastating consequences in your revenue and your marketing. So it's also given us also, as much as the positivity, there's also that thought of, how should you improve? And it's not like a very hard thing, now there are markets that have evolved, digital channels that are there, the automations are there, the tools and platforms you can easily research online and get involved. And so that, being prepared with digital transformation, especially for Sri Lankan brands, Sri Lankan companies, has been a very eye-opening situation. So I think, you shouldn't disregard all the traditional channels or platforms. I mean, those are still active, very important, engaging to the audience, but also it has put that mindset of we need to now be very agile in our processes, very transparent, very involved with technology. So I think it has been a yin and yang, and but there's a lot of positivity I could see for the future.
Absolutely, Naveen. Thanks, Udara. Let's have your input on this.
Okay, I think Janita and Naveen summed it up beautifully, but just a few points I would like to add from my end, which I think is specific to the Facebook platforms that may be of interest to the audience. So, based on some of the research that was conducted in the early stage of the pandemic, there was more than 50 to 60% increase in usage of social media, as well as not just that, not just the usage per se, but actually people spending time online, and also people who are no longer active on social media became active overnight as well. And I would say in the older segments of the audience as well, they were, don't like this word, but they was kind of forced to embrace social media as well, because that was the only form available to connect with their loved ones during the time. So that's something that's been established during the early stages of the pandemic. And I think what has happened now, I'm sure Naveen and Janit would agree with me, that these new behaviors became our new routines, right? And it has stayed that way, and it will stay that way. And I think another interesting insight I want to share, based on Facebook IQ, the way we shop, which a transformation that was supposed to happen in 10 years actually happened over the course of 2 months. This was a global survey that was done across some multiple markets. So I think marketers really need to plan for this particular shift that has happened, and it will continue to stay. And I think safe to say Facebook has a lot of tools and resources available for marketers to leverage this changed behavior of consumers. So if there are any specific questions related to how what are the new products and what are the new tools that are available, I would encourage those present in the panel also to contact me for more details as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Udara. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Naveen. I think the beauty of it is that the whole the digitalization movement is it's evolving, and people are still getting onto this platform. It's slow, but it's happening quite fast as well. And the beauty of it is that, I mean, if you think about it, nobody taught us how to use Facebook. Nobody taught us how to use an iPhone, but it's something we just engage. It just comes out, and I think the more people engage in digital platforms, I think the more benefit that we can reap from it in the years to come, especially since this pandemic situation will at least last for quite a while. So thank you very much for that general discussion on the very timely topic. I think we have.
Just one more thing. I think, Janet, Naveen, if you agree with me, I think now we are used to experiencing online what we used to firsthand experiencing offline in most segments. And I think that's something that will continue to be there and stay, Thilina. And it's important that we prepare for that and understand that it's extremely important to do it right now versus anticipating what will happen and be too late for it.
Definitely,
That's right,
definitely.
Dara. I mean, one of the questions that people ask is like, okay, this acceleration, this change of behavior was due to a pandemic, but once what will happen once it eases off, right? What will
Exactly.
happen? This won't last forever, right? But this change habit, which has given a lot of convenience for people, which has given a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities for people, that's not going to go away. This Nothing's going to change. It's going to remain. So I think anyone who has a doubt whether this would reverse, it definitely will not.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a good point about entrepreneurship. I think I know of people who gave up their day jobs to explore entrepreneurship opportunities during the pandemic as well.
Yep, I think a lot of change has been happening over the course of the last few months. A lot of change is likely to happen. So thank you very much once again. I think we have, in the interest of time, we'll just quickly scroll through some questions that we've received from our listeners. Um, so I think I'll straight away get into it. Naveen. I think this first question, I'll go ahead with you. One of our listeners have, in fact, asked, what are your suggestions to consider when developing multi-platform digital marketing strategies, and how we can effectively measure the results and compare against our competitors?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think a very interesting question. It would need a bit more time to very detail explain it, but I think this is how I look at it. I think that thinking itself is great. I think when it comes to looking at multi-platform strategy, one of the things you could very easily do is see how accessible the platform is for you. So for example, getting into a Facebook page or creating YouTube accounts are not going to cost you. It's very easy to do, and look at the accessibility. Maybe sometimes if you're a small brand, you might not have big budgets. See how how you can utilize the budgets. Look at how you can really easily access, and see if you can create an ecosystem where you are there on most popular channels. So when I talk about channels, it's not just the different social media channels. It could be also your website, which is, for example, is pretty much your showroom online. It's your product catalog. It's your online shop. It's your head office if you're a corporate brand. So think of it from that angle. Look at other channels like search engine optimization, for example, with the use of mobile devices. We are all using search at our fingertips. So there is, I know certain brands who are not strong in, for example, social media, and maybe not even doing any advertising on PPC, but they have a really good website where they are driving traffic through SEO. So if you can really look at it from the angle of looking at all the channels, so look at it from that angle. And then also in terms of metrics, I would really encourage you guys to look at web analytics. There are multiple platforms you can look at, like Google Analytics, there's Microsoft Clarity, which are both free platforms, which you can very easily integrate into your website, where you can get details about your conversions, the time that the users are spending on your website, a lot of insights which you can't maybe traditionally get in certain mediums, you can get through these free tools if you install them properly. So first thing is looking at the accessibility and doing your channel selection. Second is looking at your content strategy. What is the overall brand message you would like to push through these platforms? Third is understanding the relevant tools that can help you measure your performance. So in the website's point of view, these Google Analytics, Clarity could be free tools you could use. Facebook, of course, has its own, I think Udara mentioned, insights platforms. YouTube has its own data you can access. Accessing the data and then converting them into, I would say, call to actions and conversions is one of the other things you need to do. So from a point of effectively measuring results, I would say, and comparing against the competitors, you can always work with the data that is fairly visible. And also you can use tools like the Google Keyword Planner. You can use Uber Suggest by Neil Patel, which is also another free tool which you can use. You can use SEM Rush, which is another platform where you can do keyword research. Use these tools and then get an idea about the online demand, maybe the analytics, insights in terms of the user bases, things like that. So it's very broad to confine it, but I think if you have maybe a specific example, we can really go through an example as well in terms of an industry there, if required. Yeah.
If I can add, Naveen, since they've asked for tools, especially, I think a lot of people in Sri Lanka do not use social media dashboards like Hootsuite. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
a no-brainer, right? And also social listening. Since they're asking about competitors, social listening is important. So there are multiple social listening tools they can use. I mean, I use Social Mention, but there are so many others that they can consider. So social listening is a very important method if you want to monitor your competition.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Janeeth, because I think there's a lot of information that these freely available dashboards are giving, which you sort of need to run through as well. Um, yeah.
Thank you, Naveen. Thanks, Janeeth. There's one more question I'd like to ask, and this is for Udara. This is on A/B testing. Could you please explain with an example from Facebook how A/B testing works? A real life example would be better.
Okay, so I'll keep it quite brief because it's a bit of a complicated subject which is very specific to you. But I will first let you understand what are you trying to achieve through your A/B test, right? That's really important to first arrive at before you get into it. For example, are you trying to measure a change that you make, and like are you trying to quickly compare two strategies to understand which creative performs better, which target audience performs better? For example, if is it a custom audience versus different audience or something like that. But for this particular instance, I'm going to say you want to find out whether your single image ad performs better than your video ad, right? So let's say that you set up the A/B test. It basically divides your budget equally between the exposures, each version of the creative, and then the A/B test basically measures the performance of your strategy on the basis of cost per results, or it can be based on cost per conversion lift, right? And the result at the end of it, it's determined based on the winning ad set. So it basically gives you the result based on comparing the cost per result of each particular campaign. So let's say that you wanted to test the cost per click or cost per purchase, whatever that is, the winner of the particular A/B test is determined based on the variable that you wanted to test. So basically, to arrive at the conclusion of the test, it kind of stimulates whatever possible outcomes many, many times to determine how often the winning outcomes would have won. And also, when you are given the winning ad set, statistically, there is a figure that is mentioned in terms of the confidence percentage or the chances of a similar result if your test was repeated. For example, let's say there's above 85% confidence interval for the winning ad set, right? That's how you measure the results per se. And let's say in this scenario, your video actually outperformed the single image creative, that your winning ad set will be given to you once it's run over the course of the campaign period, if that makes sense. Naveen, was that clear?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, Udara. And I think the very basic underlining factor for us is that you look at from a marketing point of view how you can test that audience with
Exactly.
even a small amount of testing. So this is something we use in our campaigns also very well. I think this is also again the beauty of digital marketing, where you can really trial and test things out in your campaigns at a very on a real-time basis, which is I think not something you can do with maybe a traditional form of marketing. So it's quite important in that sense.
Yeah. And also just adding to it, so if I were to simplify it, if you have to first figure out what variable you want to test, I would recommend keep it one variable first, right? And then allocate your budgets accordingly. Please allocate an adequate budget so that your campaigns exit the learning phase faster. And then once you test it out, I wouldn't even say do one, do many if you can, if it's an important campaign, and then arrive at the result. Because for Facebook to give a confidence percentage allocated to your A/B test, there has to be adequate information. I think that's extremely important, and I think Naveen would agree with me as
Yeah.
well.
And I think that's from a brand's point of view, that's what we always encourage, because you need to get enough of a data to run those trials and errors. Yes.
I
So
think,
$5 won't work.
yeah, exactly. And I think most, I would say, Naveen, if you kind of, I'm not sure whether this is the same for you, we find most marketers testing out creative variables a lot nowadays versus
Yeah.
other variables. I think that's something that we encourage a lot, because your
Yes.
creative is the first thing a person sees on their feed or on their story in the form of an ad, right? So finding out what performs best is extremely important versus the other variables. Not that they are not important, but I would say that's highly.
Yes, that's just to touch on that, Udara. I think when it comes to creativity, I think creativity is very broad and it's subjective, but you can always look at the numbers. For example, when you run an ad, you do trials of multiple ad variations, you can see the click-through rates of your ads. So you see how many times the ad was shown and how many people have clicked on that ad. So you can effectively measure your audience against that with a number also saying this ad performed better because it has a higher click-through rate. So that kind of information is the information that will allow you to make better strategies for your campaigns through A/B testing also. So I think that's fairly important, and it gives that very strong opinion on what to do next.
Yeah, especially like if you have internal disputes versus what creative to run, I think this is a good way to settle those arguments as well. Because you can't argue with the results of the A/B test, right? It's not biased towards anyone. It's purely based on platform behavior.
Yeah.
No, also that I think it's important that marketers know that A/B testing is not just for advertising, right? It can
Of
be for
course.
UI, it can be for everything. But
Yeah,
advertising is an easy way of testing and figuring out and understanding what A/B testing is. But I mean, Amazon, for example, they change the location and the size of their buy now button daily to
Mm.
test, whether that has an impact on how fast people, convert, right? So A/B testing is in every facet of digital media, not just advertising, and it's
absolutely.
something that should.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Udara, Janeeth, and Naveen. One last question, and this one's for Janeeth. And I think in the interest of time, we're just in time for one more question. We've got actually two questions on this. They're asking about TikTok and Instagram Reels and where they're heading. So I'm just going to club and just ask you, where are short video platforms such as TikTok and Instagram heading, and how do we utilize them for our advantage? Or how is it going to be in the future, in the years to come, in your opinion?
Well, as whether we like it or not, I think short form video is here to stay, right? But from a content creators perspective and monetization perspective, I think Udara can also attest to this. Facebook and YouTube are both now leveraging heavily on longer form content. Right? Even on Facebook, Udara, I know there's a minimum as recommended video limit now, right? Whereas we all thought, right, it's heading towards the shorter form of video. But then when Facebook and Google both are leveraging heavily on long form video, that that's also not going to go anywhere. So my advice is yes, Instagram and TikTok, you must leverage. And I think Udara touched on this earlier. You cannot repurpose YouTube videos and make them conducive for TikTok or Instagram. It has to be done in its native format, in the native creative style of that platform, right? So my advice, I don't know whether you, Naveen, whether you agree with this in terms of a strategy when it comes to ad spend and content spend. I always prioritize YouTube and Facebook a little higher. One, because Instagram currently has, I mean, according to 2020 Jan, had about 900,000. So 1 million users from Sri Lanka. So purely on a numbers game, if your audience is in Sri Lanka, you'll have to prioritize Facebook and YouTube higher than TikTok and Instagram. And TikTok, for me, I think the engagement has reduced since the a few countries banned it as well. So but we can't write those off because those platforms will innovate, those platforms will be around. But in terms of your priority, I think I would prioritize YouTube, Facebook a little higher in terms of your content strategy than Instagram and TikTok. I think Naveen, you can add more to this.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite true, Janeeth. And one of the things we always recommend to our clients is we are always we don't have platform focus, but if you take, for example, YouTube, it's the second biggest search engine in our opinion. You do search on YouTube, you have search behavior. So one of the things we realize is depending on your target audience, for example, you might want to recommend YouTube much more than sometimes maybe even Facebook, for example, just as an example. So always look at it from your marketing audience's point of view and see how you can create those touch points. And YouTube, uh, being the second, one of the most viewed video content platforms, I think it's also important to create those. And in the Sri Lankan context, one of the scenes we are seeing is that the brands are really not still leveraging the power of YouTube. They are not really getting into creating content as a brand, which I think something we always encourage brands to do, because there's a lot to capitalize. There's a lot of attention you can grab by creating meaningful, engaging content, not just as a YouTuber, but as a brand. So that is something I think very important for the Sri Lankan market. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what we term YouTube content is what's evergreen content, right? What you put up on YouTube, I mean, I see videos back in 2003 that we've uploaded that still get views, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that keeps on engagement, that keeps on revenue. It's a multitude of things, but like you said, I mean, it's a harder transition, right? From traditional to digital and suddenly to jump into video. That's the transition a lot of brands are struggling with. But like I said, it's always like you touched on this word agile, right? We have to be lean and agile in our operations now, especially in this pandemic and post pandemic. We have to operate like a startup. We have to operate like a software company, almost all corporates, right? So I think what you said was completely true. We need to transition, brands need to transition and do video content and be on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Janeeth, Naveen. I think we are running out of time, but I think we've covered most of it. And I mean, in the interest of time, we were able to cover most of it as much as possible. Apologies in advance to some of our listeners if we weren't able to accommodate some of your questions. We did as much as possible. But most importantly, thank you very much for joining with us this morning, taking your time off on a Saturday morning and actually coming on board, registering and actually paying so much attention. I'd like to tell you that this video, the webinar, will be available on the YouTube channel of the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. So if you do need any insight onto what has happened over the course of the last 1.5 hours, if your friends need to watch it, rewatch it, or just go through what has been happening, make sure to go check it out on YouTube, on the Slim YouTube page. They'll be having this video uploaded right now. That being said, I think that's all we've got for you this morning. Thank you very much to our listeners once again. Thank you all. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for all the interesting questions. Once again, apologies for not being able to accommodate all of it, but thank you so much once again on behalf of Slim. Thank you so much for joining with us on Saturday morning. And a big thank you to our wonderful speakers for actually taking the time off on Saturday morning and coming on board. Thank you very much, Udara. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you so much, Naveen. It's been a pleasure having all three of you. It's quite a privilege to have all three of you join with us, and thank you so much for sparing the time and coming on board. I think we've had an interesting session. We've covered a couple of topics and very interesting and imperative and timely topics. Thank you once again so much, and thank you all for joining with us. On a final note, I think we'd like to mention that to all our viewers and anyone who is actually aspiring to start something in marketing or digital marketing, Slim offers the CDM and DMI programs. And if you do feel like getting on board, or if you want to sign up, just make sure you get in touch with the following mobile numbers mentioned on the screen. If you do want any information, do write to Slim on Facebook or any other platform and get in touch with them, and make sure you have all the information down on starting these programs, the CDM and DMI essential programs given out by the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. That being said, I'd like to remind once again that the entire webinar is available for your reference on YouTube. Just go search for it and it'll be available on the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing's YouTube page. Once again, on a final note, thank you very much to everyone who joined with us this morning. Thank you, Udara, Janeeth, and Naveen. Once again, it's been a real pleasure. That's it from all of us. My name is Thilina Udayaratne, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. See you once again.